On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, what's been the first impression of Isaiah Hartenstein? What do the Thunder have to do the rest of the road trip to come back successful?
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, media member, and beat writer for Thunder on SI, Ryland Styles. Follow me on Twitter at Ryland_Styles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. On today's show, brought to you by Robinhood. Robinhood Gold gives you the privileges of a higher net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up today at robinhood.com/gold. I'm Ryland Styles. Alongside me right now is Michael Martin at Michael on Sports on Twitter. Let's talk Thunder on YouTube here to discuss Hartenstein's return, the West Coast road trip, and much more. Michael, how you doing today?
Doing very well. Happy to have this, no pun intended, big addition back to the Thunder and get back to talk some basketball with you.
It's been a lot of fun watching Hartenstein. I mean, it's been 2 games now, 2 straight double-doubles. He has been big both literally and figuratively for Oklahoma City. What's stood out to you the most just in watching him since his return?
I mean, I knew the playmaking would be a big deal, but it's just really popped in a big way so far that the Thunder have just really, really needed. That and just the overall energy. I mean, the rebounding is one thing that just was very, very obvious from the start, but he just adds a whole different dimension in front of this team. I mean, it was eye-popping the other day when they were playing the Blazers, and I was like, is that a Gortat screen? Is that what he just set? Did he get that? They haven't done that all year. So they were getting a lot of different actions, but I'm very excited for Hartenstein. That one pass he had yesterday to Dub in particular was just insane, but I'm excited to see how much better he gets and the team gets along with him as they sort of just adjust to each other.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what this can eventually evolve into, and it feels like, through 2 games, everyone can just kind of say he's good, but you're right that this thing is so far away from a finished product, which I think is the most exciting part because it looks this good this fast. 2 straight games, 2 double-doubles, 2 wins in the Hartenstein era, 1-0 in the Startenstein era, which is big for Oklahoma City. Whenever I see what Hartenstein can do for Jalen Williams specifically, it's really exciting. But also, like last night, whenever he was in the starting lineup, he was able to keep Keon Ellis away from SGA, who's kind of built this reputation of being one of the best defenders on Shay. So he did that on multiple occasions, including freeing up Shay for a 3. I just think that there's so many little things that I'm not sure will ever get credited to Isaiah Hartenstein because I don't think the box score will look much more gaudy than it did in New York. I just think that the little intricate details of his screen setting, his hustle plays, his energy plays, like those things are what tie this Thunder core together and why I think it was such a great signing.
Yeah, he's never going to have just a full-on highlight mixtape, but what I will say about him is he makes plays that allows for other players on the team to have highlights, like you mentioned, where he just has these black hole screens that just swallow up Keon Ellis and other guys like that, the passes and things like that, where there's a big dunk and you're not really focused on just the quick decision that he makes, but he just sort of opens up all these other things for other guys around him. And then, yeah, the screening has been massive, the way that Shay was able to get downhill, like, it was borderline abuse what he was able to do to Sabonis just in space, but this is the best screener they've had since Steven Adams.
And then defensively, like what Hartenstein did to Sabonis defensively cannot be undersold. I mean, he routinely forced him to pick his shoulder the wrong way, of like the weaker shoulder for Sabonis rolling off in the post, and also routinely kind of made him roll into help, which allowed the Thunder to limit Sabonis, really the best they've done in quite some time, because Sabonis typically kills the Thunder. And I just think that defensively, he is going to get more appreciation than even what he did in New York, because like last year for New York, he only started the second half of the year, and it's very clear he's going to play the majority of this regular season as a starter, and even whenever Chet returns, he'll still play massive minutes. And that's another element that, like, after seeing now those two guys away from each other, I'm really excited to see what it looks like and how often they try to put those two guys with each other.
Yeah, it's going to be super interesting, and I think that it just once again stands out because the Knicks, they had guys like Mitchell Robinson, who's not identical to Hartenstein, but just much more similar than Chet or any of the small ball centers we've seen compared to Hartenstein. So that's a big thing I think Thunder fans are really, really adjusting to, is just like, whoa, this is so different. But like you mentioned, he's going to start for a lot of the season. When Chet comes back, Chet will come back as a starter, whether Mark continues to go with the pivot lineups of not really having a permanent fifth starter or starts Hartenstein, we don't know. But as good as these guys have been, like we mentioned, Hartenstein and the guys are going to get adjusted to each other more and get better. I'm really excited to see what they look like at max strength somewhere around like March once they do get Chet back and Hartenstein, they find a little bit of a rhythm.
Hartenstein returns with 2 straight wins, including the first win in Sacramento in 1,761 days. That was a long time ago, and they finally got a win in Sacramento. What else stood out to you about how the Thunder began that road trip?
I really liked the minutes from Kenrich Williams off the bench. It looked like they were in a little bit of a stall. Dylan Jones came out and just didn't look quite sharp enough in some of those lineups. But then Kenrich, just once again, like he's coming off this injury, but it doesn't look like he's had really any rust at all to me.
I think that Kenrich has been a bright spot for the Thunder, and also, as you saw last night, he's got to be the first small ball five off the bench. Like, it didn't end up mattering, but you put Dylan Jones in a very close game, and he just was not good enough. And, like, yes, it was only in total 6 minutes, and that shouldn't sink you theoretically. But you put him in for the wrong 6 minute stretch, and it can completely change a game. Whereas I don't think that Kenrich Williams will ever run that risk of like changing the game in a negative way. And I thought that J-Dub and Shay had some of their best performances playing off of Hartenstein, especially. But we're going to continue to talk about Isaiah Hartenstein and this West Coast trip, because I think that this West Coast trip is bigger than just some Thanksgiving week trip. I think it could redefine this Thunder season coming up. But first one's here right now, our good friends over at Robinhood. Go check out Robinhood today, because with Robinhood Gold, you do not need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows you to see the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rates of 4.25% APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost to an IRA account. Contributions. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of the high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here. It's Robinhood Gold. Sign up today at robinhoodgold.com/gold, robinhood.com/gold. Terms and conditions do apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rates may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. Also, want to say right now, but good friends over at FanDuel. Go check out FanDuel today, because FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. And right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app has everything you need, from live betting on the NFL and the NBA to casting future bets and even doing something the day of if you see a line that you really like. So they have everything for you over there at FanDuel.com. Go there right now to join today, and when you do, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. You can go to FanDuel right now, and you can already see lines on the NBA action for today, including Houston in Minnesota. Houston is 3.5-point underdogs in Minnesota. Go check it out today at FanDuel.com. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. We've talked Isaiah Hartenstein returning with Michael Martin at Michael on Sports on Twitter. Let's talk Thunder on YouTube. But now, let's talk West Coast trip as a whole, because, Michael, I think that whenever we were doing this stuff in the preseason and early in this season, it was almost kind of boring to talk big picture about the Thunder, because everyone had them as the #1 seed. Everybody had them running away with the conference, and it would just come down to what it looked like in the postseason. But now, with these run of injuries that have not gotten any easier or any better for the Thunder, as you saw Cason Wallace leave this game against Sacramento, it almost feels like maybe holding them to that standard of like, you've got to be the 1 seed is a bit unfair. because of all that they're having to deal with. But on the flip side, they are the 1 seed still, and they do look really, really good now that Hartenstein is back. I think that this West Coast trip, like depending on how you handle from here on out, Warriors, Lakers, Rockets, I think that that will go a long way in kind of defining what the new barometer is for success in the regular season.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, those teams are like right below the Thunder or right around them in the standings, so those are all big time games just for standings reasons. But I'm with you. The scale has sort of changed as with all the injuries, where it felt like almost a foregone conclusion that the Thunder would be the number 1 seed just with the depth of their roster and how consistent they are. But yeah, I'm not hell bent on the Thunder needing to be first overall in the West or break or bust or anything like that. I think that they need to be in the top 2 to 3. But I think that everything's going to work itself out for them. But this road trip, like you mentioned, is going to be very, very important to kind of see where they are as we get more of a scale for them. Because no offense to teams like Portland or Sacramento, but they're not exactly the top tier teams in the West that you're sort of measuring yourself against.
Yeah, and that's the thing of like why I think that like if they handle these next 3 games and they go 2-1, or even like a ultra competitive 1-2, like 2-1 or better, that's where for me the reservations of like, well, how are they going to handle these injuries kind of subside, because they'd be at that point clearly good enough with this new 3 of Isaiah Hartenstein, J-Dub, and Shay, which I do think in the regular season is a comparable top 3 with those 2 guys plus Chet. Now in the postseason, it's dramatically different, but in terms of outworking teams and outplaying teams, those 3 guys can carry you very, very far to that 1 seed. Maybe not to the 65 game heights that people were dreaming of before the year, but certainly to still the 1 seed. So if they handle these next few games like really well, 2-1 or better, I think that this team is back to being asked with, hey, you got to go get the 1 seed, in the sense of you're talented enough to do it, because unlike those other teams, like you saw Golden State last night lose to Brooklyn, unlike those other teams, I don't think the Thunder will really have many off nights where they're falling to teams that they shouldn't. You look at the game against Portland on Wednesday, whenever they didn't start the best, but they rallied back and they were able to beat Portland. I have no concerns of them taking care of Utah on Tuesday. I mean, they've had really one flub game all year, and that was in San Antonio, where they almost came back and they didn't have Hartenstein or any big men at all. So I just think that this team is going to still check their boxes and on teams that they should beat. And if this new group with Hartenstein as your top 3 is able to take down some of the best in the conference and some of the best in the NBA, well, then you're right back where you started a bit, and you're kind of biding your time still until Chet gets back.
Yeah, you have high-level rim protection and extra rebounding, and that's all that you can really ask for out of Hartenstein to really boost this team. That's all the Thunder really need. Of course, like you mentioned with Chet, they don't have that three-point advantage. They don't have some of the mobility, but Hartenstein's a better passer, so it does even itself out in a way. But yeah, I'm with you. I think this could be something where it really allows them to catch their breath and find a rhythm here, where it looked like for a couple of games there, at least with the Dallas loss, things became a little bit rickety among the fan base of is everything going to be okay long term, which I think we felt confident about. They just had to survive that stretch. But if they can get through this road trip and go, like you mentioned, a competitive 1-2, or go 2-1, or even 3-0, get really fortunate there, I think this could be something that sets them up for the rest of the season in a really nice way.
And what's so crazy about these next 3 games, I'm not really sure what's the toughest game. And I say that with endearment to the other teams of Golden State. In Golden State is going to be very tough. You saw what they did to the Thunder in Oklahoma City. Well, granted, that was a weird game because Chet goes out in the middle of it. You clearly saw this team was emotionally deflated for 40 of the 48 minutes against Golden State. Credit to them for making a run at the end. But now you have Hartenstein back, which changes the complexion of the game a bit. So Golden State, no one's going to say that the tied for first team in the West is not a tough game. The Lakers, they're off and on. I'll give you that. They're a very volatile group, but they did play the Thunder extremely well last year. So I'm very curious to see how those 2 teams match up this year. And then the Rockets are playing really good basketball, and the Rockets, for whatever reason, kind of play their A game against Oklahoma City. So if you were going to look at this in these next 3 games, what do you think is the most difficult matchup?
I'm going to say the Lakers for the variety of reasons. I mean, Anthony Davis is a matchup problem for every team in the league. He's just impossible to guard. He's a matchup nightmare. LeBron is a guy who's going to get his in a lot of ways. JJ Redick, I've been impressed with what he does. And then it's been the storyline of the season, but the Lakers, number 1 in free throw differential, free throw rate. The Thunder are almost dead last. I think that could really bite them in a game like that, as well as some extra rebounding things. Obviously, Hartenstein's going to help them stay afloat a little bit more, but the Lakers do put a priority on rebounding, and if you can't turn them over like you can't with a lot of LeBron teams, I think that could put the Thunder in some trouble.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with the Lakers because of what you mentioned, the free throw disparity, and like I really trust that like the Lakers could get a Dalton Connect 30-point third quarter, and at this point of the season so far, we've very seldomly seen a Thunder role player have an out of body experience to this point, despite them being number one in the conference, which I think is encouraging long term for the Thunder. But like if you get a good LeBron game and he's going to be turning back the clock, and you know what Anthony Davis is capable of, even though you have Hartenstein, I still think that Anthony Davis can really get the job done. Plus, you get to the line more, and then you throw in a Dalton Connect game, and that could be a really uphill battle on the road on Black Friday. But the Thunder, with Isaiah Hartenstein back, brought him off the bench against Portland, which was crazy. But whenever they did start him, they went back to Wiggins as a starter. Now, we only have a one-game sample size. I think that Mark's going to do what he did with Chet, where it's like, here's a Wiggins game, here's a Wallace game, here's a Joe game, back to Wiggins, and this revolve door of these three guys. I don't think he should do that. So who do you think should start alongside what is now looking to be a new core four of Shay, Dort, Dub, and Hartenstein?
If he's healthy, I think he should be Kaysen, and I don't really think it's that close, like we've mentioned on a variety of pods. No shot at those other guys, but I think Joe and Wiggins, their skill sets just thrive better off the bench. It's just an extra energy punch. And Kaysen, you can stagger him, you can play him in some of those second units, but I think starting him really puts the Thunder in a really good position. He has been off shooting this year, but just the defensive versatility that he allows you to have, where you can have two primary defenders with him and Lou to start a game where you take some stress off of Dub and Shay defensively, I think is a massive thing. So if he is healthy coming off this little like ankle tweak that he had against the Kings, I think it would be him.
Yeah, if they're for whatever reason still bent on not starting Alex Caruso, because clearly they don't want to start Alex Caruso, I would have said Caruso, but with the three options that we more likely have, I would agree with Kaysen, because you just don't have anyone on your bench that can get to their spots offensively the way that Wiggins can with the ball in his hands. And then the shooting splits for Isaiah Joe are just screaming at you in the face of like he had entering last night where he went 3 for 8. He had 7 games as a starter, 7 games as a bench player. He shot 27% as a starter and shot 41% as a bench player from three-point land. Like, he's just clearly more comfortable off of the bench, and you can still get him in there at the end of quarters to play alongside Shay and J-Dub and still play with the stars while allowing him to be more, in a suitable role for him where he's found more success. So I think that with all that being said, Kaysen kind of allows you to keep those two guys on the bench with those talents, but also allows you to set the tone defensively. Like you just cannot work around the way that Jada was playing defense right now, the way that you now have Hartenstein in the back end, and the way that you have Lou Dort. That's a very tough group to score on, and they can get you out in transition, and they can really rack up points early while you don't lose much from your secondary unit, because Kaysen, at his best, is playing off of these other guys. Like I still think that there's potential for him to become a more well-rounded on-ball player. It's clearly not right this second, though, and so you can maximize him while also maximizing the other two. I know that everybody thinks that, like, starting is this huge honor, and so I feel bad, saying that those two guys shouldn't have it, but at the end of the day, it's about kind of leveraging what everyone does well, and I just think that that's a clear-cut trio right there.
And I'm doing this off the top of my head, so maybe you can tell me I'm wrong, but whether they start or not is not affecting how many minutes these guys are playing. So it's just really a formality of just who starts the game, who's in the starting lineup. And then, as always, it's going to be most important who finishes these games. But I think that we're both on the same page here in terms of just skill set wise. It just makes more sense for Kaysen to be the one as the fifth starter.
Yeah, especially for Wiggins. Whenever they do start Wiggins, he's always getting 20 minutes, like right at the number. Maybe you go to 21 or 22, but it's been typically 20 minutes for Wiggins whenever he starts. Those other two guys could, I guess, theoretically, see their minutes inflate a little bit because you're more prone to closing quarters with them, especially like a guy like Isaiah Joe when you're trying to steal a three-point bucket at the end of a first quarter. You might put him back in there. But, like, other than that, like, these guys are playing their routine minutes, and they are closing with them no matter who starts, they're closing with them situationally. Do you need more defense? Do you need more offense? Do you need more shooting and gravity? So they're still doing those things on the back end. I just think that throwing your first punch, your best punch, is probably Cason Wallace because of what he can do and what he can add without really taking away anything from his own personal game. But coming up, speaking of Cason Wallace and the rest of these role players, who has to step up for Oklahoma City to make it through this road trip? I want to tell you right now about our good friends over at Built. Go check out Built today because Built is awesome. There's no cost to join Built, and as a member, you'll earn valuable points on rent and the rent that you pay in your everyday life, plus earn points on your everyday spending. Built points can transfer to your favorite hotels and airlines, and even ones you haven't heard of. There are over 500 airlines and 700,000 hotels and properties around the world that you can redeem your Built points toward. Points can also be redeemed toward future rent payments and unique experiences that only Built members can access. So, if you've not been earning points on your rent, my question would be, why not? You can do so at Built, which you're going to be paying anyway. So start earning points on rent you'll already be paying by going to joinbuilt.com/lockedonnba. That's joinbilt.com/lockedonnba. Make sure you use our URL so that way they know that we sent you over there at joinbuilt.com/lockedonnba to get started earning points on your rent today. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Joining us today is Michael Martin at Michael on Sports on Twitter, and Let's Talk Thunder on YouTube. Also, both of us now on Blue Sky. I saw that this morning, so check us out on Blue Sky if you're on there as well. But Michael, whenever you look at this season, it's tough to complain about a team that's still number one in the West, but they have not gotten like these massive games from role players typically. Is there anyone on this roster that you look at and say they need to step up and be a bit better if they want to withstand the challenges ahead to return and remain that number one seed?
The two guys that stand out to me most are Lou Dort and Isaiah Joe, just in terms of three-point percentage and three-point volume. Like right now, Dort is shooting better than Joe. I know the volume is different, but just having that extra spacing just opens up so many things for the Thunder, and there just haven't been this many games. Like, the Thunder have been blowing out teams. Like, they have a nice point differential of, I think, like 12 now, but they haven't had many games where they're just blowing teams out just by bombing away from three, where they can just really stretch these leads out. It feels like a lot of late surges in the mid-fourth quarter, late third that really open these games up, but they haven't had a lot of just super, super dominant stretches like start to finish in games.
Yeah, I think that those are two great answers because, like with Lou Dort specifically, you can see how at the start of the year, whenever he was red hot from three, how much different this offense looked spacing-wise and the way that the defenses were respecting him. And then on Monday, I thought he had a fantastic game because he limits De'Aaron Fox to 14 points and he only goes 0 for 2. But still, you want to see him take more than just the 0 for 2 and, of course, convert on those three-point opportunities. For Isaiah Joe, like, the secondary unit especially, and if he's in the starting unit, whatever, every group kind of goes as he goes with that three-point shot. But I think that it'll be, looking to Cason Wallace, and not just because of his, cold three-point slump, like he's been awful from three. To me, there's not much to say about his three-point shooting because he's taking the threes that you want him to take. He's proven that those shots can go in more often than not. It's just that right now, this second, they're not going in. I kind of want to see Cason evolve as a guy who, whenever you do get your chances to have the ball swung to you and now the ball is live and you're driving in, instead of settling for those floaters, instead of immediately kicking once you touch the elbow, like, get downhill, go finish at the rim strong, something that he was able to do a lot in college. And I think that can start to translate into, okay, you see a couple go in that way, now you got your confidence back, now your offensive rhythm's back, and then you start to see him cashing on triples off of that as well. So I just think the Cason stepping up, because there's so many avenues for it, it could just be simply finding your catch and shoot stroke, but it also could be all these other things like driving and facilitating. I just think that him stepping up would branch off a lot for this Thunder team.
Yeah, that's a good point. There are other ways to find your rhythm without just making threes to get into the three-point, I guess, just in rhythm, for lack of better words. But for him, like you mentioned, there's just too many floaters that I feel like he settles on, and he's not a bad finisher. He can finish with either hand. He's really impressed me with his left hand, his offhand. He's also pretty athletic. He'll dunk on some guys. He got Vucevic earlier this year. He's really physical. He's really strong. So I agree with you. I'd like to see him attack the basket a little bit more and try to get a few more of those fouls that the Thunder are still really, really hunting and pursuing this year. But yeah, it seems like a lot of his offensive plays are pretty formulaic in terms of like, am I open? Okay, I shoot it. Is somebody closing out on me? Okay, I'll drive and then I'll either do a floater or I'll pass it out.
So the next time that we talk, we'll have the games in hand of Warriors, Lakers, Rockets. What's your official prediction of that stretch?
I'll say 2-1.
Do you know? Do you think you know who the loss is going to come to, or are you just going to blanket it? You don't have to, but it gets you an extra point if you nail it.
There's no fun in just in blanketing like that. I'll say the loss is against a weird Rockets one.
I like that because you could do the whole, well, they historically have not played great in Houston, and like we mentioned before, the Rockets played great against OKC, and you're looking ahead to like getting back home. You're looking ahead to that Jazz game, which should be pretty smooth sailing in the NBA Cup. I'm going to say that they win Wednesday against Golden State, and the entire team rushes the floor to bark. Even though they haven't been barking recently, maybe Draymond Green stopped them, but I think that they'll bring it back on Golden State's hardwood on Wednesday. They're going to lose Friday against the Lakers, and then on Sunday, they'll pull out a come-from-behind win where at times it looks lost, like especially in that second quarter, and then in the third quarter they rally back and they win the game in the fourth. So I'm going 2-1 as well with that loss to the Lakers, and then we'll be back previewing the Utah Jazz, who may be Cody Williams-less after they sent him down to the G League, Michael.
That'd be a big deal. Yeah, we need to see him square off against Dylan Jones in the G, but hopefully he'll get brought back up. I think it'd be a fun dynamic, even if it's for a few possessions with him and Dub guarding each other.
Yeah, I really do hope that he's back. And I mean, typically these guys don't go on G League road trips, so maybe he'll be back for the NBA road trip to go to see his brother and get those photo ops and everything else. Hopefully for him, he can turn his rookie season around and beyond. But, Michael, let them know what you've got cooking up. I saw that you just put out a video today on Let's Talk Thunder on YouTube.
That is right. I've been working on a video that you helped me a little bit with, getting the clips out, but it's just about the drives and the free throws that have been just the topic of conversation for a lot of Thunder fans, us here today a lot of times, and just like what's going on, why can't the Thunder get to the free throw line? I went through basically every drive the Thunder have had this year and then broke down their comparisons to the Grizzlies, who a lot of people I've seen line them up with, and then just how different guys on the Thunder roster are driving and maybe what some of those ailments are that could be improved. But yeah, looking forward to that one. Hope everybody checks that one out, and almost at 1,000 subscribers, but appreciate you having me on.
Make sure you go check out Let's Talk Thunder on YouTube. Subscribe, watch the latest video, watch all of the videos because they are Thunder topics that you're going to care about, and go check them out. Until tomorrow, whenever we recap the game against Golden State, be good and be good to win.